So I'm very happy that you can tell us about your great discovery, and you are the only scientist in the world who made the greatest contribution to the modern science, empirically proving the existence of subtle matter, which was not so much considered through modern science. But this subtle matter is very well known from the ancient cultures, and they were considering this the most important aspect of our reality, which is giving life to everything. So please, if you can tell us about your discovery.
Yeah, the inspiration came from Vedic science, as it is told from Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, or taught in the world. And in addition, also in Greek philosophy, there are predictions that there is another form of matter which we cannot see with a naked eye. And there are more predictions from Vedic science that this invisible form of matter is even the basis of space-time reality, space-time geometry, and is also the basis of consciousness. And this was very challenging to me. If you hear something like this, there are two possibilities. You can take it not serious, or you can be triggered to take it very serious. And so about 30 years ago, when I heard this from Maharishi, I realized that there must be something behind this strange story, so to say. And I took it very serious and started with experiments. And strangely enough, the first experiment worked, and from this time on I had the feeling we have now the possibility to show that subtle matter really can be proven also from an objective point of view. And this can be done by special balances, which are quite sensitive, because this real form of matter, as Maharishi said, has real mass and energy content to such an amount that one can measure it with a sensitive balance. So it was a question to find detectors which absorbs this form of matter. And as I just said, even in the first experiment, I found a detector which was able to absorb this form of matter. And the weight changes in comparison to a reference system indicated that the detector absorbed something in time over days. And these mass changes indicated there is something which the naked eye cannot see, but has matter content and energy content. And from this on, I started with hand-operated balances. And after the first experiments, I was able to guide a PhD thesis at the former MIU in Fairfield, Iowa. After this, I took some experiments and went to the board of directors of a company, a world-known company who is producing balances around the world. And the technical director then just gave me two balances which are very precise. They work automatically, and the data can be stored during the measurements at the computer and can then be depicted in graphic form with software which is available today. And this is important. One needs to, for the proof of existence of this form of matter and its characterization, a modern state-of-the-art technology in weighing. That means one needs very sensitive balances, which are not so cheap, and one needs computer hardware and software to make the recording and the graphic display. And this is available only since, let me say, 10 or 15 years. 100 years ago, this form of anomaly, so to say, this inconstancy of conservation of mass in closed systems was already detected from other researchers with hand-operated balances, which were not so sensitive as my balances are. And but it was forgotten. There have been published 3 to 4 papers in scientific literature about this anomaly, and then it was forgotten for the last 100 years. And from the inspiration of Maharishi and his knowledge about Vedic science, I, so to say, rediscovered it, and with this online recording of data over days and weeks, where 10,000 or 20,000 data are recorded in sequence, one could easily show that this form of matter exists, and one could characterize its properties quite well.
Yes, this is very interesting, and especially that we can measure something what we cannot see.
That's
Actually,
correct, yes.
and can
Yes.
that we can have proof of existence of something which we cannot touch or see, and this is a great support for all those people who are in a way aware of existence of such life energy,
Yes.
which is actually material reality,
Yes.
and they are using this form of life energy for healing and for better understanding of their own life and spiritual growth.
Yes. As there have been people around the world since thousands of years who subjectively have experienced the existence of this form, as you said. And if one starts to experience this form of matter, it can very strongly improve the health state, and it can also improve the state of mind, cultivates the mind, and this has been recorded since ancient times in the Vedic civilization, and is a basis of the knowledge about Veda in India since thousands of years. So finally, so Veda could be detected with such objective means of weighing, but in between many people have reported about these kind of subtle matter and have used various names to describe it. For example, Aristotle called it entelechy, it was called apeiron, it was called homoiomerion from Anaxagoras, it is termed in Kaina chi and psi. In modern times, Tesla discovered it and called it radiations, or it was called Orgon from Wilhelm Reich, or Od from Freiherr von Reichenbach. And a lot of other names were given. Also in the US, there were a lot of people who discovered it and termed it with special names. There are at least 3 or 4 dozen of names in the scientific literature and in the popular literature, from which one can see that people have detected this. The subjective detection is an old story, so to say, but the objective detection was only possible with this new state-of-the-art technology which I just described.
And this is probably changing our view of the nature of our universe, about its origin.
Yes.
How the universe is created, and so please, if you can tell us something more about the origin of the universe in this context.
I mean, it's astonishing that this form of matter shows a quantized behavior. So it means this form of matter shows particles which can be detected on the balance, and astonishingly enough, these particles have a mass content which is identical to the Planck mass, which is 21.7 microgram. And with a balance with an accuracy of plus minus 1 microgram, it's easy to detect such particles. And this Planck mass is part of the so-called Planck scale, which is composed out of a Planck mass, a Planck length, and a Planck time. While the Planck mass is the biggest particle, the heaviest particle which we know today, so to say, Planck time and Planck mass are the smallest proportion in time and space, and quantize, so to say, space and time. And in modern times it is thought that the origin of the universe is at the Planck scale. That means 13.6 billion years ago, it is imagined today that the universe started to spring up from a non-visible virtual vacuum ground state at the Planck scale in time and space. So with this detection that the quanta of this form of matter are part of the Planck scale, we are immediately connected to a very basic level in the universe, the origin of the universe. Another point is that with this quanta of subtle matter, we can really extend modern science. We can really construct a space-time geometry based on this form of matter. As was predicted from our rishis, this was one point of the inspiration. And within this space-time geometry, we can formulate the existence of particles with very regular geometrical structures using Platonic bodies. And from these Platonic bodies, which are higher dimensional background structures of the normal particles which we see in our space, we can even calculate rest masses of the particles with a precision of 1 to 3% over 7 decades. So it's an astonishing coincidence between the predictions from this extended science, extended with this subtle matter, and the present knowledge about elementary particles from high energy physics. So that means our consciousness, which seems to interact with this form of matter, works at a level of the Planck scale, even today. Even so, our universe has evolved from space-time over such long times. Our consciousness and our existence still is connected to the Planck scale. So we are living in an old universe, but nevertheless, our thinking still functions at a level which is connected to the origin of the universe, strangely enough, so to say.
Yes, Maharishi used to say about analogy that the sap is the basis of the plant. And whether we can apply this analogy also to this, that this subtle matter is the sap of the universe. And like the sap of the plant has all intelligence within itself to structure the all different aspects of manifested plant.
Yes.
So like this, maybe this subtle matter can have also this kind of inner intelligent structure which is expressed in different qualities of maybe some forms, geometrical, and which is the basis of the structure of all the geometry of the atoms and the molecules and all the grosser levels of existence.
I think this is completely right what you are saying, because this second prediction from Maharishi said this form of matter is, so to say, an elementary form of consciousness. These quanta are small living beings, so to say, with all aspects of consciousness and can associate to form higher forms of consciousness, so that human consciousness and animal consciousness and plant consciousness can result from associations of such quanta to form huge structures of consciousness which have a quite large spatially extension in space and time. But besides this, one can really use these quanta to construct, so to say, an extended science where everything is based, space-time, elementary particles, living beings and other forms in the universe, which are completely springing out from this geometrical associations of subtle matter, so that everything in the universe finally has a living background. Life is then omnipresent in the universe, and it is more or less a wonder that in the waking state of consciousness we see something and believe that it could be dead. In reality, in higher dimensions, everything, every atom in the universe, every so-called dead piece of metal or whatever what we can see, has a living background structure. And again, it is astonishing that with this higher dimensional background structure of elementary particles, we can start to explain anomalies in physics which exists and have so far had no special explanation. For example, the so-called quantum paradoxa of elementary particles, that a particle can be a small spherical, a small ball, so to say, at microscopic dimensions with special quantum properties, spin, mass and electric charge. It can also have a wave nature. This duality is a part of the so-called quantum paradoxa and is absolutely not understood today, how a particle can be a particle or a wave at the same time. But with this understanding that a particle has a highly geometric background structure of this form of subtle matter, which is a field-like wave structure, but from this field-like wave structure emerges a particle in so-called Zitterbewegungen with the speed of light permanently. A particle really is an androgynous entity with one part appearing in our universe, and this is what we call a particle, but with a background structure which we do not see, and modern science so far has not understood that it exists, and this makes the wave nature of the particle. So a particle is in principle a higher dimension entity, but not only a four-dimensional as modern science claims to be today. It is at least something which is maybe 12-dimensional, so in 4 dimensions the particle pops up, but this is only the iceberg tip of the whole story, and behind the scene an invisible structure makes the wave properties. So it means a particle is really a duality in itself. But this does not hold only for particles, but it holds also for living beings like us. We are also higher dimensional beings, but in the waking state we have reduced our cognition to such an extent due to our education from parents and school, that we lose the ability to look in higher dimensions. And this is what Maharishi wanted to bring back to the world, that people can develop by the technologies of Vedic science higher states of consciousness, which extends also the possibility to view in such dimensions and to see that we are not only the body which is sitting here on the chair, but that we also are connected to a living field in higher dimensions, which is really the origin of our life. If this field separates from the visible body, then this body is just a lump of so-called dead matter, even though on the microscopic level it still functions as a living being, but on a macroscopic level it appears to be a kind of a dead body. And the subtle matter field has separated and can look for another rebirth without any problem. So this kind of detection of this subtle matter and its characterizations yields a lot of explanations in the scientific world, for example, explanation of the quantum hysteria and other anomalies, which I could explain in a minute if you would have the time, and also in the subjective area of our own personal life. And so we can understand how higher states of consciousness can start to function. First, we know from this area of research that behind this subtle matter is another even deeper layer in the universe. So we get this origin of the subtle matter, then we get the level of the subtle matter, and then we get the visible world. We have a divided structure, so to say, which corresponds very well to the Atman Veda Vishwa structure, which Maharishi presented in his Vedic science. So it fits quite well to Vedic science, and Vedic science always was a guidance for me to look how science could be extended, and it worked really quite well, I must say.
Beautiful, yes, and it reminds me especially this holistic view on the life through the approach, the science that you actually extended the edge of the modern science, which is today not entering so much into the field of consciousness, but it is inevitable. But one special characteristic is that this brings to the human life new dimension, not only on the physical level of living, because probably there will be also, with the time, developed some technology how to use that level of subtle matter in the practical everyday life. But most important thing, what I find now in your presentation is that it gives a new view to the life, in a sense that brings new ethics, which is actually the same like the ethics of very ancient philosophers or Vedic science and the teachers, great teachers of Vedic science like Maharishi Mahesh Yogi were speaking about. And this is that the nature of life is unity, that we see everything has life. And not only that, but even the dead matter, which we think it is dead, it's actually life, and that it has its own owner within it. So that we respect everything around us and love everything around us. This is the natural consequence of this understanding. So I think if this approach science take, and in this way, if they teach the young generations about the nature of the life, then the net result will be that they will develop naturally in their consciousness this kind of ethic which is natural, and this will bring the much better quality of life on planet Earth. And
correct. You have really very well summarized, according to my opinion, what could be a consequence. Because we see in this research that life is omnipresent. It is present at the microscopic and submicroscopic level, also macroscopic level where we are living, and even on the cosmic level. Everywhere is life, but behind this form of Veda expressed in these various levels is another background. And this is the core of Maharishi's understanding, that we today have technologies to, so to say, even bypass this subtle matter level and start to experience as a basis of Veda. We use technologies of Vedanta, which go beyond the Veda. And from this point of view, our consciousness can first expand to the basis of Veda. Then we get what we say cosmic consciousness. To the basis of Veda means Atman. Then we experience and can stabilize what we say cosmic consciousness. Then due to this regeneration which is embedded in this experience, we can open new visions, new possibilities to see something, to hear something, to touch. So all senses can be extended, that we can realize this subtle matter as a real existence everywhere, which then is called God consciousness or refined cosmic consciousness. And finally, we could even come to a state where our awareness is permanently embedded in the Atman to see Veda and Vishwa, that means the universe, just as vibrations of Atman in itself. And since this is unity, which you beautifully explained, I mean, this is a kind of vision for humanity, for the education system in every country of the world, which was brought by Maharishi and which could be supplemented, so to say, by this kind of research, because these levels are now proven objectively in addition. But besides this, as you mentioned, we also could use this form of subtle matter for technologies in the outside field, as you already mentioned. That means for the gaining of energy, for example. This form of matter certainly can change into heat, for example. There are a lot of experiments which show this. That means normal energy can be generated out of this form of matter without any problems of limited resources, for example, because these forms of energy are in the universe contained in much higher amounts than normal matter, so to say, and there will be no lack for recovering energy from this level. So we have various visions. This Vedic knowledge together with this research offers various new visions for individuals, societies, and also for mankind. For individuals, Maharishi already brought these principles of higher states of consciousness, which we touched a little bit in connection with this research. The second level would be the handling of collective consciousness via the Maharishi effect. And these collective fields of collective consciousness find a very beautiful and simple explanation with this research, because the individual life fields can superimpose to form these collective fields. So this is a very simple and scientifically demonstrated explanation. And besides these individual and collective developments and possibilities for development, certainly in the next decades possibilities will pop up where this form of new matter can be used in technical applications. And this is then a new vision for humanity, that we can, independent on the central production of energy with unwanted byproducts, we can produce, for example, energy free of byproducts, delocalized around the world in every household, so to say.
Yes, and I would just like to add that I had the opportunity to participate in one very big number of International World Peace Assembly, which were 3,000 participants there, and practicing Maharishi technology of yogi flying, so which creates a very strong influence of coherence.
Yes.
And what was astonishing for me is that I was feeling like this group, it's like in one cloud, which you can feel physically when you are moving around. Mm-hmm. And especially if you go a little further from the place where the group was settled, and then you are coming back and entering that cloud, you could feel some physical presence of some very soft, very blissful quality in the atmosphere.
Yes.
In which all the participants were drawn in.
Yes.
So it was like some, actually this subtle matter on a grain scale was enlivened in that group. And
Yes.
probably then these kind of groups can spread this and connect these fields all around the world. And then all world can be in one cloud of that quality.
Of harmony.
Harmony and life.
You explained it very, very nicely, I think. And as I said, these individual fields of subtle matter can superimpose. And we should not forget this form of subtle matter is a mixture of two forms. One form of subtle matter has life-destroying properties, and the other form has life-supporting qualities. And what the individual meditation seems to do is that it prefers the absorption of the life-supporting form of energy. This is exactly what you felt when you left the group. There's a field around such a big group of meditators which spreads far to the society and transport these harmonious qualities of the life-supporting forms of subtle matter which are absorbed from every individual in the group of such a Maharishi effect group. And this is a beautiful subjective technology to enliven the internal structure of a person and superimpose it with other persons and use this as a radiator of harmony into the society. And we know from more than 50 Maharishi effect studies that this works. And this is a big hope for the world, that by big groups in every continent, these negative tendencies in modern society can be overcome, and the harmony, as you described it, can go around the world in huge fields of collective consciousness, of life-supporting subtle matter fields. This would be the start of a new age, and Maharishi proclaims that this start already has happened and that it is irreversible. So it will happen more and more visible also for the individual, the stressed individual, so to say, in the living in various continents.
So it's very important that we enliven that aspect of life-supporting element of that subtle matter, which
Yes.
is, as I heard with the minus, but has a positive effect.
Yeah. Yes.
And it's like the anti-gravity
Yes,
effect. Can you
yes,
tell us some more about that?
As we just said, this form of matter has two physical signs and two physical qualities which can be expressed, so to say, on the normal level of visible matter. As a subtle matter with positive sign has negative life-supporting effects, it has destructive effects. And this is also necessary for any animal and human being. So if we eat something, we must destroy something. That means we must have destroying properties in our life field for our own existence. But on the other hand, the subtle matter with negative sign has, as experiments show in detail, life-supporting properties. And so the question is always, who is dominant in the body? The life-destroying effects, then we fall sick, or the life-upholding effects, and then we are healthy and in balance. And Maharishi's technologies are the best known way to me, besides Ayurvedic food and other things which are supportive, to accumulate this form of subtle matter which has life-supporting effects but which has a negative physical sign. So if we absorb this in Vedic technologies, our body really becomes lighter and lighter and lighter. And if the intensity of this absorption becomes very strong, our body even could lift up in levitation experiences.
Yes. It reminds me like these qualities of sattva, rajas and tamas, which are described in Veda,
Yes.
that this subtle matter can have these qualities. And then in Vedic teaching is, and in yoga, it is desirable to have as much as possible sattva
Yes.
and as less as possible rajas and tamas. They are needed for life to
Yes,
go on,
of course.
but the sattva should predominate. And
Excellent.
so that
Yes.
quality is the quality of that subtle matter which we enliven through these technologies.
Yes, and it should not only be in total dominates a total life field. Every organ has such life fields, and in every organ, in every cell, this sattva principle of subtle matter with negative physical sign but positive biological action should be dominating. Then our body is healthy and is ready, so to say, to jump in higher states of consciousness.
Thank you very much for such a great contribution, and we hope to see realization of many scientists all over the world to continue research in that field.
Thank you very much. This would be wonderful.
Yes, thank you.
Jai Gurudev.
Jai Gurudev.